I only got 5 minutes. I got a lot of questions, so I'm going to consolidate them into the top three issues that I've been hearing from my constituents. You had mentioned there's 11,000 individuals on the waiting list for housing. This is, I got to tell you, the number one issue in my office. These parents are so upset. They don't know what's going to happen to their child. The agency really needs to do something here, and this administration, I feel, has not made this a focus. What is the current wait time for housing right now out of, for these 11,000 people?
Mm-hmm. So we hear the concern as well that you're describing from family members who are concerned about accessing a placement for their loved one. I can tell you we've taken a number of actions in the last year that we think will help us. We have, as I mentioned, reached out or attempted to reach out to every one of those 11 or 12,000 people to determine either if they have an immediate need that needs to be met, and for 500 or so of them, as I referenced, we're now working with them to meet that need, but also to help us develop a long-term plan to meet those needs. Many people who are on that list of about 11,000 people aren't looking for something immediately. They're looking for something a little bit more long-term. And we want to do a better job of planning services for those individuals. In addition, the $120 million that I referenced in new funding will be going to support people living at home. So for people who need to access a residential placement, that funding will be available for them.
How do you determine who needs immediate need? Because I'm assuming that there's a difference of opinion here between what the family or the providers are saying and what the agency is saying, which is why there's so much frustration. The city of New York alone is about 400 individuals that are considered priority one. I mean, what is the wait time for those 400 people? And when will you eventually get to priority 2 and 3? I mean, there is a lack of housing, and it's not, there needs to be more housing. It's just not an issue of finding alternatives. I think that, I would like to know a little more about how they're going to address this particular issue. And what is the wait time for those 400 people that are on priority 1 alone? Forget about 2 and 3 that we didn't even get to.
For every priority 1 individual, and prioritization for housing in the OPWDD system is defined in our federal waiver. So we have different priorities, and it's based on the individual's need. So for an individual who's a priority 1, we aim to work with them to offer them a placement immediately. So to the extent that you're aware of folks who are priority 1 who are not getting access to immediate placement, I'd like to sit down and talk with you about them, because they are all working, both individuals and families, with our regional offices to access placements as they're needed.
Okay. But then we talk about, let's say priority 1 is being assisted. Those individuals in priority 2, I have a family, for instance, in my district that came to see me. They have an adult son who, they're aging, they're seniors, adult son who weighs like 250 pounds. They cannot do this on their own. They even if they are looking for, let's say, long-term down the road, when we get to that time, if we don't do something now about the housing crisis, we're going to be in the situation where priority 2 and 3 are not being addressed at all.
Well, Assemblywoman, that's exactly why we took the action that we did in reaching out to all of these individuals, because you're right, while they may not need something today, we want to be able to better plan for the future of our system and help work with those families to plan an opportunity for them for the future that works for them. It's also been a recommendation of our transformation panel that we really look at how those prioritizations work and ensure that for people living at home, we do have a plan for those individuals so that we have a long-term solution for their housing needs.
Okay, I'm not getting an answer, so I'm going to move on. We'll talk about this at another time, one-on-one, but I want to move on because I only have a minute left. I want to just echo the sentiment that has been expressed by my colleagues regarding the minimum wage increase. I think it is really irresponsible to put in a proposal to increase the minimum wage without putting the funding. This is sort of, in the numbers, you had mentioned that you do not have the figures of what it would cost, but the providers have given me a figure, and the figure is about $250 million a year and about $1.5 to $2 billion by the year 2020. We can't just would equate to basically a $2 billion cut to these providers if we're not going to do anything about providing. So we can't. It's great to say we want to give everyone a minimum wage increase, and I think that the individuals in this sector certainly do deserve to be paid more than they do at this time. But it's really irresponsible to say this is going to be mandated on them without putting the funding to go with it. So that's just my comment. You don't really have to answer because you didn't have an answer when they asked you earlier. The third point I just want to say is that family and advocates continue to express their concern about the fate of OPWDD and the thought that a lot of the responsibilities are falling more and more under the auspices of the DOH. And as you know, obviously, the OPWDD has not had a permanent commissioner in some time. And I think that a lot of the local advocates are concerned that there's no individual that they can go to locally. There used to be an individual in the county that they could work with on a regular basis. Now that's more of like a regional individual that's handling a lot more territory. What can you say to these providers and family members that have these concerns to kind of ease those concerns about the future of OPWDD?
Well, I would say a couple of things. First, it is correct that the Department of Health now handles rate setting for the entire Medicaid program, but we work very closely with the Department of Health as the lead policy agency on how those rate changes are implemented. We also, as you referenced, have staff in each region that families do work with. And they're very used to going out and working with families and how those needs can be met. OPWDD as an agency has existed since the time of Willowbrook, as you know, and the Willowbrook consent decree, and continues to work to advocate for services for the individuals in our system.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator.
Thank you. Our next speaker would be Senator Savino.
Thank you, Senator Young. Commissioner, don't feel like you're about to be tag teamed by Assemblywoman Malliotakis and myself. I've listened to the testimony, I read it, and if I listen to just you, it seems like everything is fine and dandy with OPWDD and our provider agencies. And then we live in what's almost like a parallel universe. So last Friday, the Staten Island Developmental Disabilities Council protested in front of each one of our offices on Staten Island. Not because they were angry at us, but they view us as the face of the governor's budget, as we view you as the face of the agency. So to the providers themselves, they don't see things as rosy as you're presenting them. They are terrified about the minimum wage proposal. It has been said many times. I've said this publicly. It's not just about providing the money to these agencies, which is critical, and you should know how much it costs, because trust me, they know how much it costs. But more importantly, it talks about what we value in our society. What would it say about us as a state if we would think that a person who puts food in a bag or delivers pizza should be valued higher than someone who takes care of the developmentally disabled? So beyond the minimum wage issue, we should be looking at what we can do to increase salaries in these agencies, regardless of what happens with the minimum wage. Because in order to recruit and retain people to take care of our most vulnerable population, we have to compensate them fairly and appropriately, and I don't believe that that has happened. These agencies, as you said, 80% of the services are provided by the nonprofit world. They are struggling with the past several years of changes in rate methodology. They're repaying a Medicaid rate that they never was not their responsibility. So they are struggling to keep their doors open. 80% of the services are provided by the nonprofit world, only 20% by OPWDD. But even in your agency, the rate of mandated overtime is through the roof. So obviously we're not investing enough in the services. We're not treating our partner agencies appropriately. We're not providing career ladders. And this is becoming an increasing problem to families who then show up in our offices. So that's more of a statement and less of a question. But if you're going to come back to us, you've got to give us the dollar amount that is necessary to stabilize these agencies and, in fact, improve their service delivery so that we can provide real services to the people. They're struggling not just with the finances, they're also dealing with the Justice Center, which, if you speak to some of them, the way they have been treated by the Justice Center, and it's appalling that they're not here to answer those questions, has been less than fair and just. So we have a real problem on our hands. I'm sure if you sat here later and you heard from all the providers, you would hear the same complaints we receive. And I would hope that maybe someone from your staff would be here to listen to it, because it's not as rosy as we think it is in the world of OPWDD.
If I could just respond on the issue of where we are overall as a system, there are certainly many challenges. We acknowledge that. We hear these concerns from providers. We're doing a number of things to try to address them. We hear the concerns from family members as well. One of the reasons why we constituted the transformation panel this year is to help us figure out with our stakeholders a path forward for the future. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we certainly do recognize that there are these concerns, and we are working to address them. I believe that you actually feel that you guys are doing that. I'm just suggesting to you that there is a difference of opinion among the nonprofit world who is responsible for delivering the services to this vulnerable population. And perhaps, if you can't sit here all day long, I understand that, but you would have someone from your staff listen to the concerns of these agencies. They're the ones who have to implement these policies, and many of them don't know how they're going to keep the lights on going forward. We will do so.
Thank you. And also, if you would be willing to come out to Staten Island and meet with the Staten Island Developmental Disabilities Council, I think that they would be very appreciative of the direct intervention, as well as other developmental disability councils around the state.
I'm happy to do so.
Thank you.